Alright, welcome back. Would you believe me if I told you that it was 55 degrees earlier today? You gotta live in New England, it's snowing now. But, in any case, in the last episode, our party had met with Dar, the ogre lieutenant who lived within the keep of Kagramar. They made a very tentative and shaky agreement that they would get rid of the goblin shaman Teru and get rid of, well, I guess the whole goblin scourge, the worshippers of the god of disease and grime and chaos, Bebet. Unfortunately, they knew they wouldn't be able to trust Dar, but Dar did promise friendship or an alliance of some sort if they would uphold their end of the bargain. But everybody sort of knew that's going to fall through as soon as it seems best fitting for the ogre. The party then go to the underhalls after Tamarin fell through a floor trap and nearly died. But down in the underhalls, they encountered the bodyguards of Teru, and dealing with these bodyguards, they inevitably ended up fighting Teru himself. Through one heck of a critical hit from Zion, the party were able to get rid of this Teru, and it managed to shake the morale of the goblins enough that they ran into hiding. Luckily for the party, they were able to get rid of Teru, but unfortunately, they really didn't get much for loot. The goblins, through our random rolls, only had 2 magical weapons available for them to take, and unfortunately, the only weapon that was truly at hand was a cursed weapon that was on the hip of Teru. So, the party left with the measly coins they were able to scrounge up from the dead goblins, and they left. On their way back, they ran into no random encounters and safely made their way back. Unfortunately, in the combat with the goblins, we did lose Fennel the cleric. And now, back in the town, they were given a reward from the mayor, the village elder there, and with this small measly sum, we're going to have to give out some XP and roll up a new character to join the party as we find out what we're going to be doing next with the party. So let's go back to the basement and get out of this cold. Well, welcome back to the basement. I'm ready to get started if you're ready to get started. We have a few tasks ahead of us. First of all, we have to dole out some XP. Second of all, we gotta make a new character for our party. And last but not least, we have to figure out what the heck they're gonna do next. Now that the goblins are pretty well dealt with, the ogres are much kaput. It seems like our time now should be just moving forward. So without further ado, let's get cracking on some XP. So to begin with, let's talk about the treasure we collected in the last episode. As far as I can remember, the only XP we really got from treasure would have been the money that we got from the village elder. So, unfortunately, the 300 gold really translates to 300 XP across. Now, some people like to kind of slice words with how they judge the concept of defeating a monster. So in my mind, if they are bested in some way, and that doesn't necessarily mean outrunning them, but some other means of conquering them, I guess. There's no good way to put it, but in my mind, there's a few encounters where we ran into some goblins and we were able to kill some of them and best quite a few of them in combat. So let's quickly tally up how many that was, and I'll do the calculation right now with the power of magical editing. I hope that's enough time. Editing, okay. So now that we're back here at the old whiteboard, I laid out some of the XP that we're going to be getting, mentioning the goblins that we'd killed in the episode before the last one. I didn't include traps that were disarmed or locks or anything like that, and unfortunately we really didn't get much treasure at all of note. So I'm going to include these confirmed kills, this treasure, something like Dar, who was not defeated by the party but instead run off in his own special way. I think it makes sense that we're not going to include him in this, but I will include a quest complete category. I'm going to put that in there after we do this rough, quick little math here, and we'll see sort of where the party's at for their XP. Now, anybody who plays old school knows, or any of these, BX games knows, or even advanced, a lot of the treasure that you're getting in these games comes from, the XP you're getting comes from treasure. So, in the case of killing the goblins, even though we killed 5 goblins are only worth 5 a pop. And that's before we divide it. So, right off the bat, we have 25 XP right here for the regular goblins. And luckily, we killed quite a few of the bodyguards, or at least defeated them in combat. Again, we got rid of the whole group of them, so I'm cool with saying that we got all the XP. bodyguards are worth 20, and the king is worth 35. So Teru was worth 35, and our bodyguards were worth a total of 200. So again, this really is not that much. So in total we got what, 260 plus 300, so a total of 560 XP split up amongst the party. Now, I am a firm believer in quest completion XP when you're playing in a game like this. I know that a lot of people issue that kind of thing and say that it's not really in the spirit of the game, but me personally, I really do feel like it makes quite a big difference, and I think it helps keep people sort of goal-oriented. So in my mind, a game like this where the treasure didn't really amount to much, I'm still going to include a quest complete XP. Having defeated the goblins, having put to rest that whole issue, and gotten rid of the ogres in one way or another, I do believe that the party deserves some sort of quest completion XP. That's kind of a huge deal for them. So I don't want to go overboard with this, but let's consider how many party members we have left, and maybe we'll get a nice clean number that we can round up to for our division. So from our starting lineup of characters, plus the extra character that we added on there, Tamond, really all we have left are these three. With that in mind, we're only going to have to divide it amongst 3 people, so maybe what we might do is we'll give this a quick 940 XP for quest complete. Again, maybe that's a lot, maybe that's a little overkill, but in my mind, that rounds us up to an even 1,500. We divide it 3 ways, it's going to be 500 for each of them. That's fine by me. Because in my mind, none of them are going to level up, and instead they're going to have to go back out there and do some more questing. So it's not like I gave anybody a free level up. In fact, most of them are probably going to need 2 more of these kinds of small quests in order to level up. Unless we find the giant trove of treasure. So with this in mind, I'm going to quickly add that to our XP piles, and then we'll, make a new character. So let's get to it. So as far as XP goes, Zion the Sneak has no 10% or 5% bonus based on ability scores, but she is at 505 out of 1200 XP. Again, pretty close to halfway, which is nice. Then we have Bareen, the magic user, who also has no bonus, but out of 2,500, she has 505. Again, only 20% of the way there. Pretty rough. Tamond, however, does have the 5% bonus, but again, 525 out of 2,250. This is what we get when we have characters who have a lot of potential and a lot of special abilities. But speaking of characters with potential, let's go ahead and let's make a new character, shall we? Maybe it's the case that I'm feeling a little spicy today, but I think it would be a lot of fun if we just go into making this next character with absolutely no expectations, no inclinations, nothing. We just roll it up, we see what makes sense, and then we just bang it out. So 3d6 down the line, let's see what we get. Starting with strength, we got 9. Okay, average. Now, it would help to have a nice frontline fighter. Maybe we'll get a good constitution. Well, we sure didn't get a good intelligence with only an 8. Wisdom. Ooh, off camera. We had 8, 12. Okay, not bad. That's good. At least we'll get I think we get a +1 on saves versus magic. Now, here with the dexterity and the con is where I'm hoping we get some real decent numbers. Okay, cool. Another 12 for dexterity. No penalty, so that's at least nice for that. Oh, okay. Well, again, a 10. Nothing too exciting. In charisma, holy smokes. 16. That's pretty good. The question is, do we keep this or do we re-roll? I know I just said I was feeling spicy, but I'm like, this stat array doesn't really inspire too much in me. I think it's great that they get great bonuses on reactions and retainers. That dexterity of a 12 doesn't really give us much of a bonus. Nothing really screams to me that this is a great adventuring character. I mean, they could be a bard, but I think that right now, I don't know if a bard is exactly what. Well, again, I said I was going to jump into this and be spicy, but you know what? I don't think these numbers inspire me. And I feel comfortable saying, we'll roll it, again, without intention, but we'll roll one that feels cool, So let's see what we get on second. Alright, 12 on strength. Again, no bonuses, nothing bad. 8 for intelligence. Sorry, 9 for intelligence. I can do math. It's okay. Nobody saw anything. 9. Cool. A 5 for wisdom. Well, it doesn't take a wise man or woman to fight evil. 12 for dexterity. Okay, another 12 for constitution. And, well, a 12 for charisma. That's really interesting. 4 12s, a 9, and a 5 in wisdom. Interesting. Again, painfully average, and you know what? Maybe we'll just keep the painfully average character. An average character is interesting because it gives us a lot of opportunity for us to pick something out that, even if it doesn't really require something like a high bonus or something, maybe we can, take it to our advantage that they're just pretty well-rounded with nothing special in between. Maybe we can pick a cool class. So I'm going to peruse some options real quick, and I'll come back with some good ideas. I started digging around at some of the options that we had available to us, and I was looking through the advanced genre rules, and I started thinking about maybe something like a barbarian or a knight or something like that. But you know what really might scratch the itch of fantasy for me? And that is a dwarf. Why that didn't occur to me before, beyond me. But I think a dwarf would be a lot of fun to tag in here. So, our dwarf is going to be a level 1. The only requirement for the dwarf was having a constitution of a 9. Now, getting an XP bonus or anything like that is really not in the question for them because they only have a 12 in strength. So, no bonus, and that's totally okay with me. Alignment, let's go ahead and let's figure out where they fall on the old alignment train. I can't really off the top of my head remember the rules that I had for alignment and all that earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and say that law, chaos, and neutrality, 1 to 2 will be lawful, 3 and 4 will be neutral, and 5 to 6 will be chaotic. Cool, 1. So we are dealing with a lawful dwarf, but where do they fall on the other aspect of this? I'm going to use a D10. I'm going to say, how about... It's a dwarf, so we'll probably say that a 1 through 4 will be good, 5 through 8 will be neutral, and a 9 or a 10 will be evil. Oh, jeez. A lawful evil dwarf. Okay, I mean, I can, we'll make it work. Maybe this character is just painfully greedy, but they view their lawfulness as a sort of binding to the party that they're with. They're a grumpy, curmudgeonous, and awful, stinky, smelly dwarf. But they recognize the value of having teammates. Would they sell their teammates down the river if they had to? Yes. Would they do it if they were getting paid? Likely. So let's keep this little crunchy dwarf as is. As far as his name goes, we all love a dwarvish name. How about his name is... How about... Ogrid? Ogrid? That sounds like Hagrid. That's kind of weird. So why don't we... How about his name? Let's see, we have Bareen, we have Tamond, we have Zion, and maybe this character's name will be... M-A-R. Magrum? That sounds like Magnum. And I don't think I think about the people that I play D&D with, and I think that if any of them knew I had a dwarf named Magrin, they would probably immediately call him Magnum, and there would be implications and jokes made all about. And I'm hoping people in the comments will also appreciate a good joke about that. I also wanted to give a quick shout out in the comments to my good pal here. His name is Todd. Todd, sorry, Todd, I don't want to butcher your name, but I'll put a quote here from one of your tweets here. One of your comments. Todd, thank you so much for always being a pal, always being there to leave comments. It's been really awesome having you around for the ride. So, maybe in some sort of weird homage to you, I'll name him after you just a little bit. How about his name is Todrin? Well, Tamond and Todrin. Ooh, how about Todrick? What a great name, Todrick. Okay, so Todrick. I'm sorry, I had to erase this like 100 times, and you know how pencil can be sometimes. So Todrick. How about Todrick Ironhelm? Cool, excellent. All right, let's get his saving throws filled in and his health. All right, so real quick, with the power of editing, I was able to fill in all our saving throws and a few other bits of information. So coming from the top, saving throws are going to be kind of excellent for dwarves. They really get some good, nice low numbers in the beginning. And our wisdom of a 5 gives us a -2 on our wisdom modifier if it applies, which really does not help us. But luckily, our super cool 12s give us, no penalties to our health. Unfortunately, that also means no bonuses to our armor class, no bonus to ranged attacks, no bonus to melee attacks. Stinks. But again, because he's a dwarf, we get some pretty cool perks. Listening at doors, we get a 2 and 6. Opening stuck doors, 2 and 6 because of our strength. Finding secret doors, we don't have any special things for that, but we can detect construction tricks, so sliding doors and secret doors. We at least get a bonus there. But on paper, it's still a 1 in 6 chance like anybody else. And then we get a 2 and 6 on finding room traps, which is pretty nice. I put our movement down as 20 because I'm anticipating some heavy armor, but let's roll up some money to see what we got next. Oh, by the way, Infravision, super awesome. Detecting construction tricks, I already went over that. And we have Dwarvish and Common as our languages. So, let's do some money real quick. 3d6 times 10. Let's hope we get a better number than our smelly 5. Ugh, what a good start, Okay, 60. Oh, boy. 70 gold. Watch. Well, 110 would have been cool, but 70 is what we got. Maybe this is why he's such a grumpy guy who wants nothing more than to rack up some sweet coin. And honestly, that's probably why he came here. I would imagine that Todrick Ironhelm probably came here to this frontier settlement in order to find adventure and a bunch of moolah. Probably a bunch of people to trick and, screw out of their money. So, excellent. Dwarves also need 2250, I believe, for level 2. 2200 even. Okay. That's what I get for assuming. Cool. So, let's go ahead and start buying some equipment. I'll come back after my shopping trip. Now that we've got our money all established, I went ahead and I bought ring mail and a small shield, which took up quite a bit of our money, and right now we have absolutely 0 left. I bought a spear for him, which I figured maybe is not exactly the most dwarfy weapon, but you know what? Let's try it. It's got some perks. Only a d6 of damage, and his armor class with his ring mail and a small shield is a 6, which again, not the worst ever, but it's really not that great. I bought a traveler's pack, which gave me the backpack, some chalk, grappling hook, 2 50-foot ropes, a hooded lantern, a tent, common clothing I had to buy, a water skin for our drinking water, 3 days worth of rations, and we have 3 flasks of oil for our hooded lantern. So, that in mind, we are good to go. Todrick Ironhelm, the lawful evil dwarf, is ready to try to collect some cash. But speaking of cash and shopping trips, let's go ahead and use some of our hard-earned money to upgrade our party just a little bit, so they won't, we can't promise anything, but maybe they won't die. So let's go check on that. So I had an interesting idea, and I think I'm just going to go ahead with this. After looking over the characters and looking over all their stats, I realized, or at least their equipment, I realized that, Zion, for instance, really can't do much more in armor than what we have with studded. And Bareen also can't really do anything better than just, wearing a robe. Tamond is also armed with some pretty good gear, and a 4 for an armor class really isn't that bad. They don't really know Todrick yet, so I don't imagine Todrick's going to be able to get too much in the area of freebies. But one thing I was thinking about is we have 300 gold. So I actually just had my microphone die on me as I was in the middle of speaking, so bear with me as I catch back up to where I was before. As I was saying, the party really won't benefit too much from having a bunch of new gear given to them, such as, armor and whatnot, and instead, I figured maybe what we could do is the party would be able to use that 300 gold to buy some horses. I figured the party are in good graces with the people of the village, and we'd probably be able to pick up some riding horses for all 4 members of the party. Well, 4 members as soon as Todrick joins the gang, which I'm sure nobody will have a problem with that. So, horses are usually, the riding horses are 75 gold, getting the saddles is about 25, so really market value should be 400 in an honest market, but because the party have earned such a name for themselves here, I think it's only fair that we could probably say they get a sweet 4 for 3 special here at the old village of Val-Idar. So with that in mind, I think it's safe to say that the party would just buy some horses and we immediately cut the coin. So all 4 members of the party, once Todrick joins the group, will have a horse for themselves. So now, let's go to the camera again. Check it out. Again, we're going to pretend like I definitely knew that my mic died right away, and I didn't have an entire day's worth of time to check out the videos that I had recorded and realize that maybe, just maybe, a lot of my stuff had not gotten audio recorded on it. So the wardrobe change, nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. Luckily, I didn't get too far ahead. So I'm just going to recap what exactly had happened when the microphone died. So what I had suggested I do is, 1, Todrick's going to join the party. Todrick's alignment being lawful evil is potentially a little difficult to justify, but because the party are looking to do some work and to earn some money, it seems very clear that Todrick, who's evil in the sense of being greedy and, kind of callous, is probably willing to join a group of adventurers who are out there doing adventures and making money, right? He sees them on some sweet new, fresh off the lot horses. He's going to see that as an opportunity. I can make some money, and especially because the party offer him on goodwill one of these horses that he can ride off with them on their adventure. So Todrick joins the gang after spending time over at the Elvish Tower, spending time talking about what they're planning on doing next. Now, another thing I had rolled up but got cut with the audio was I rolled dice to see on a high-low roll, and again, I really wish you guys could have seen it. On a high roll of a d20, I got a crit. Of course I did. For the high roll, I suggested that the party would explore, that they would not look in the town for rumors, and instead they would go exploring. I then looked over at the map, and I suggested we might want to cross over the waterway and be able to check out what could be across the water, rather than travel farther east and up into the plains past the Keep of Kagramar that we had just been in. So, with that in mind, I suggested the party would need to find somebody with a boat. So they asked around some of the fishermen in the village, and luckily one of the fishermen was willing to offer them that ride across the way. Now what's kind of funny about that is I also said, what are the chances that those sweet giant leeches that we had rolled up in that first episode would maybe get some airtime? So I said maybe this particular fisherman happened to, know somebody who went missing and assumes that it's these giant leeches, because he went missing by that crevice. And why don't you come back to the table so I can explain this little scenario a little bit more. Again, I really wish this would have just recorded the audio the first time. So my little stream of consciousness here was detailing the fact that there was a 1 in 6 chance that our friend, the fisherman, would have this other friend who had gone missing thanks to giant leeches. Naturally, I think you can imagine what had happened. I got a 1 in 6. So the party were given the name Ferd, the fisherman Ferd, who's going to give them a ride, mentioned his friend, Bordis? I can't read my own handwriting. We'll say that his name is Bordis. So Ferd and Bordis were friends. Bordis went missing, and all that was left behind was his boat on the shoreline, his little fishing vessel. Ferd knew that this was a very strange occurrence, so he's been trying very, very very hard to figure out what had happened to his buddy. So what I then said is we'd roll a d6 on the oracle, or d6 oracle, and I would say, will the party take him up on this quest to figure out what's going on with the leeches? And I rolled, and I got a 1, which is a yes and. So I suggested that yes, the party will help out, and in exchange for this, Ferd will offer to be their private ship captain if they need to go across the way in the water in this area at any point. And it felt like it was a fair compromise to be able to get some peace for Bordis if they can figure out what's going on. We then went ahead and double-checked what's going on with the leeches. There are 8 giant leeches within this crevice. I suggested that maybe in high tide the water comes up over the shore and it gets up into this rocky crevice, gets tussled down in here where all the leeches are, and the leeches every once in a while come out to figure out what they can grab on the shoreline here in this bay. Unfortunately, they were able to get Bordis when for some reason he was off of his boat doing something, slurped him, went back into the crevice. So, in the end, is there any treasure to be found amongst the leeches? No, not really. Instead, there's a bunch of broken baubles, a sword hilt, some arrowheads, some cloth. Really nothing of value. Oh, and a skull of a gnome. I think it's safe to say that Bordis's body will also be down here. A very decrepit and slurped up body, which is disgusting to say the least, but the last known place that Bordis was over here where his boat was. So I imagine Ferd probably had the boat just pulled up onto the shore far enough away that it wouldn't go away, just in case Bordis somehow came back. He didn't want to, sell the boat, scrap the boat, anything silly like that. So that's about where we left off. And now, I suppose, we can get on with questing, figuring out how we're going to find out where these giant leeches are. So let's figure that out. When I consider what it would take to find these giant leeches, I think it's safe to say that this giant sinkhole, this big rock over here, if it's going to have 8 giant leeches in it, it's probably pretty sizable. Is it gigantic? No, not likely. And in fact, what we have for our notes from the when we designed this layer, I mean, it's just a pretty simple cave, and it's just a crevice with a giant hole at the bottom. So I don't imagine this thing's more than about 20 feet down, and I imagine this basin at the bottom is probably only about 20 feet across at the most. So they're probably writhing and squirming all over each other down here in a big pile. Now, that's horrible, and it makes me think that the refuse of all the bodies and everything is probably tucked away deep in there. Now, the party have no idea that this is the case. So I'm imagining the party would hang out here, and our ranger, Tamron, would probably figure maybe we would try to attempt something of an attempt of tracking. Now, because the nature of this situation here where we're going to be tracking giant leeches in the water, it definitely feels like this is going to be quite the heroic feat. I don't imagine that even a very high-level ranger would have the ability to track leeches around the time of the tides changing and all that. I don't imagine leeches leave behind a whole bunch, but there is a chance that maybe we find some scraps or remnants or something from the fisherman that's tucked away in some of the kelp that washed up or amongst the rubble or whatever. So real quick, we'll go over our chances of tracking and success. So as far as tracking goes, rangers can identify and follow tracks. Now this obviously improves over time, and at right now, our level 1 Tamron only has a 20% chance of success on tracking, which is not very good. The chances of this being easier for us to track, the fact that it's a soft ground like sand means it'll be a little bit easier for us to be able to track this sort of thing, so we'll get the bonus of about plus 20%. So our total chance of success right now is 40%. So I'll even get a little ticker tracker going on this. So we have a 40% chance right now. Next impact here is the size of the group being tracked. So we get 2% bonus onto our tracking attempt for every individual beyond the first. I'll even include the first, why not? And because there are 8 of them, that'll give us a plus 16%, right? 56% chance. Cool. The next bonus we have is passing through an area where other tracks mingle. Are there chances that there's a lot of other tracks out here? No, not necessarily, but I think we'll just leave this as it is, because the other factors will be much more accurate with impacting this number. So next, we can check the age of the tracks. It's going to be minus 5% per 12 hours. Our buddy here has probably been missing for, well, I guess we might as well roll that up. Why don't we say that there's a chance of 10 days? We'll say that it's a 1 in 10 days that he's been missing. He's been missing for 6 days. So that'll impact our percent chance by 30%, bringing us down to a measly peasly 26% chance of success. Okay, next, rainfall is minus 25% chance per hour. Now, because we have such problems with like the rain with the tides coming in, I'm going to count that in the same way to mark it as the rainfall. The fact that the tide would just wash away any slimy marks or anything like that. So essentially what we're dealing with is a 1% chance of success, because minus 25 per every 20% for every hour. So with a 1% chance, we are really not in luck. I feel bad that I just went through all those stages of explaining this just to have to roll a die that was pretty well guaranteed not to be a success. But would this not be my podcast? I mean, yeah, my podcast, my YouTube channel, if I didn't get a 1 on this roll? You know, honestly, 96 is so rudely close. I really wish I could do something about that. So let's consider this. I imagine the party now have a chance to at least investigate the boat. I think that it's safe to say that Ferd probably would not have done anything to mess with the boat or anything like that. So, because it's a fishing vessel, I don't imagine he spends too much time aboard the vessel. And for that reason, it seems safe to say that the party, when they inspect it, would see that his rations haven't been disturbed, right? His clothing that he has stored on there, all of his gear, he doesn't even have fish. So something happened to him before he left. And that leads the party to believe that he got stopped before he even went anywhere. Now, the fact that he's over in this area and he's nowhere to be found means he might still be somewhere in this general area. Now, I think it's safe to say that these leeches are not traveling super far to get their target, so it seems kind of likely that the party would probably think to check over here in this strange rocky outcropping. But I feel like, I don't know. Why don't we roll? We'll roll a skill check against Tamrin's wisdom to see his chances of intuiting this. I'm going to give him a +4 bonus because of how simple this seems. So as long as we roll a below a 14, it seems like his first thought would be to check there. Ah. Okay, so it seems like his first thought is not to check there. So maybe what we can say is the party instead decide that they're going to comb the beach. They're going to walk all the way up the shoreline for half the day and all the way the other way for the other half of the day. So because they're going to be traveling along this coastline, what we can argue is that there's chance for a random encounter out here, and it'll be a water encounter because of their proximity to the water. Or, I'll tell you what, high roll, we'll count it as a wetlands because that's where the village is, and on high we'll do wetlands, low we'll do water. So low it is, so we'll do a water encounter. So because where we are at the water, pretty sure it's a 1 in 6 chance of random encounter. And let's see if I was right. So our chances of random encounters when it is swamps is 3 in 6. And I guess it doesn't really say for coastal waters. It's 2 in 6 chance of getting lost, but I'm not seeing anything for in the water unless I'm blind. You know what? Why don't we just take the swamp number? Because I'm not actually seeing the chances of running into a random encounter in the water. Am I blind? Clear, city, grassland, settled, barren, desert, forest, hills, jungle, mountain, swamp. Yeah, okay. Super weird. I don't know why I'm not seeing that for that. Okay, so we'll just count it as a swamp. Very good. I'm sure I'm going to realize later that something I did was wrong here. But what's interesting is we did get a random encounter. Interesting, maybe, definitely dangerous. The party are at least on horses, and that will make our lives a little bit easier. But right now, we've got to roll a d20 and a d8 to see what we've got for a random encounter out here on the watery little coastline. 19 gives me a little bit of fear, and a 4 gives me a little bit more fear. So let's see what we got for encounters. No dungeon encounter. Okay, so because we're dealing with swamp, and we got a 4, so that puts us for humanoids. Interesting, not immediately dangerous. And S is the subtable. We've got grasslands, oceans, swamp. So humanoids, we got 19. 19 gives us a troll. Oh boy. Okay, well, let's get procedural in this piece, shall we? There's a chance that our troll is not all that interested in the party. But just as a refresher, I know we all know what trolls are, but intelligent, wicked, 8-foot tall humanoids with emaciated rubbery bodies. So, let's see. There's no immediate things that we need to figure into our stuff here. Okay, so I figure what we'll do then is because they're not surprised any different than anything, why don't we immediately roll for surprise? And because we're in the wilderness, we remember that the party are luckily only going to be surprised on a roll of a 1, thanks to Tammin. So let's go ahead and roll to see if the party are surprised on a 1. No, so they're not surprised. They see the troll or trolls, And let's see if the trolls can detect them. The trolls are snuck up on a 1 through 3. 4, so no, they're both aware of each other. That's not as good. Now, random encounter trolls, we get 1d8 of them in the wild. So let's see what we got. Actually, I'll use a more visible one. All right, hope for 4. Okay, definitely not what I like. I am not happy to have 120 hit points of troll wandering around out here. Not great. So let's go ahead and figure out our encounter distance and reactions. So let's see. As far as encounter distance, because nobody's surprised, it's going to be 4d6 times 10 yards. So let's roll that super quick. Where the heck did that last d6 go? Ow. Duh. All right, here we go. 46 times 10 yards. We've got 10, 150 yards. Cool. So 450 feet away. That's a pretty sizable distance that they see him. So it must be out there on the coastline. Maybe there's a bunch of grasses and shrubs and like mangled trees and a bunch of old wood just kind of stacked in a little alcove over there. And as the party are trotting along on horses, they look out and they see one of them go walking, slumping out from the tree line, and they see each other. And now there's a chance that this reaction works in our favor. So the highest charisma in the group, I don't actually think we have a bonus to charisma. I think Zion gives us a +1. She was able to pull it off with Dar before, so maybe we'll get lucky. Let's see what our reaction is with a +1. Okay, all right. A 9 is definitely nothing to sniff at. Let's see what that reaction actually gets us. So monster reaction roll, a 9 is indifferent and uninterested. Okay, this is a very lucky roll for the party. Now, because our party are on horseback, maybe it's the case that the trolls realize that their overall movement speed, which is only 40, is nothing compared to the horses, and as the trolls begin to slowly march out there to come chase after them, the party turn tail on the horses and rush away. The trolls, realizing they'll never catch them, just immediately ignore it and don't bother. The party, now knowing that there's a bunch of frickin' trolls hanging out here on the beach catching up some rays, are probably a little bit afraid of what the future might hold for them. So the party head back over to where the ship was and double check down that way, concluding that they now have no idea of where he could have gone, Mr. Bordis, just combing this coastline. So with that in mind, the party will camp at the site of the ship, or you know what, we'll go back into Val-Idar, and they'll stay there the night at the Elvish Tower. Okay, cool. So the quest for giant leech Bordis continues. I'm going to say now the party have a chance with the Oracle to check inside here. Let's roll for it. Remember, 1 is yes and 2 is yes, 3 is yes but, and vice versa for no's. 3, so it's yes but. So the party agree, yes, they will investigate this rock, but what kind of but? What kind of but? But we'll say they agree not to go all the way in. They see that it drops straight down, and they're going to agree not to climb down into it. So the party will have a chance to just like stay at the top and look in. Okay, so maybe what we'll do then is we'll roll a chance, since the leeches, there's so many of them, the place is fully inhabited. We'll say that there's sort of an almost immediate chance that there's I don't know, a leech just kind of hanging out by the entrance, right? So why don't we go ahead and we can roll, let's roll another Oracle roll. Let's see if there's leeches at the front. And we got a 5, so the answer is no. So no, there's no leeches anywhere to be found at the entrance. Man, sometimes the quest just really does not want to get started. So they stand there, they look inside. I imagine the place smells pretty awful of all the old water, all the old rotten stuff. And that stench down there is very, very horrible. Everybody hates the smell, so they agree to back away from it. And they have to now come up with a new idea. There's really no sense of finding him out this way, and now there's an idea they have of maybe he fell in the water and he drowned, or maybe he was drinking or something like that. I imagine Ferd can clarify that no, Bordis was a hardworking man, he was no drunk, and he was good at the sea, so there's no chance of that. So the party now have an idea. Maybe they'll comb the beach again. So we'll spend another day of meandering around and looking around. Okay, Another chance, no random encounter. So the party spend the entire day going up and then all the way down. Now let's just roll a chance that when the party come back, if one of the leeches is out and looking for food. I imagine the party standing at the top, making a bunch of noise, maybe the smell of their breath or something. I don't know how leeches work, truly, but I imagine giant leeches would be much more aware of potential victims when they're, shoving their head down the rocky hole. So let's roll another 1 in 3. Let's roll another 1 in 3 chance to see if the leeches are going to come back out and like look for them potential meal. It's a 2, and so yes, there will be a leech or 2 coming out to inspect. So let's go ahead and let's roll up at least for the giant leech. Let's see what we've got for how many are encountered at a time. So number encountered in a dungeon is 0, but number encountered in the wild would be a d4. So there will be that many that have been disturbed by the party entering in their little muddy cave. And there are 3 of them. 3 giant leeches are meandering about the waters. It's nighttime when the party come back, and they stop again at the boat just to see if maybe any other sort of clue or feature has come their way. And so the party then will roll for surprise to see if we notice these ugly, grimy little leeches. Now again, double checking our leech notes here, there's no sign of anything that tells us that the leeches would have any sense of noticing anybody easy or anything like that. Their blood draining bite is absolutely horrible, and they actually move pretty fast, all things considered. Luckily, again, the party are on horseback, and that at least keeps the party away from being, attacked by most of them. The horses trail the leeches, traveling 50 feet per round faster. So that at least gives us that chance. So when the party come trotting back in the night, let's roll for surprise. Again, the party are only surprised on a 1, and the slugs will be surprised on a 1 through 3. So the slugs are surprised on a 1, and the party are not surprised on their 3. So the party see the writhing leeches crawling out of the crevice and meandering around on the beach, just looking around and sniffing at the boat, sniffing at the ground, and the party see them in the dim light that the moon and the stars gives off, reflecting off the water and the ocean as it laps up to the shore, and they see the leeches just stretching and pulling their bodies in these amorphic, slimy ways. So now the party have this wrenching sense of disgust as they see them looking at the boat, and they see them crawling all over and trying to get some sense of it. And the party probably realize from watching this and watching them climbing in and out of the hole that might have something to do with this. Now, a good question to ask is, will the party assume that this is what's going on and this is what happened to Boris? And I think we should roll again on the Oracle just to see if that's the case. So yes, the party will assume that this is what happened, right? Now, the question is, are they going to attack these things and get like some sort of revenge and try to kill them in order to feel like they've, done Bortus right and be able to earn that back for Ferd? 4, no and. So no, they realize these giant beasties are horrible. They realize that this is something awful. And instead, maybe they agree they're going to go back to town, tell them that there are substantiated rumors of these giant leeches, and say there needs to be some sort of a grander way of handling this issue. What that could be is hard to say. So I think maybe what the hell happened is the party will return home now back to Val-Idar. They'll head off to the Elvish Tower, and they'll speak with Ferd, who's undoubtedly there having a drink and trying to deal with his stress and anxiety of knowing that his good buddy Bortus is gone. I imagine that Tammin is going to be the nicest one in the party to try to break this down to him and explain. Bareen is probably the most analytic about it and just assumes that this was probably a quick and rather painless death, and then Zion probably doesn't say much at all. I think Todrick also probably doesn't say too much, but is probably looking around the room at free beer he can snarf up from somebody who's not paying attention. Okay. At this stage, Ferd probably has a couple of ideas and probably knows what to do about the leeches. I'm assuming he knows that the leeches, being these little rock crevice dwelling things, are probably very dangerous. Clearly Bortus didn't survive, but there's probably going to be a lot more of them down there. And if Ferd wants to get revenge on them, he'll probably have to come up with some scheme for how to deal with them, assuming there's probably a lot more in there. So let's roll to see, does Ferd want revenge? In the inverse being, well, why don't we ask it this way? Does Ferd feel like this information is enough to will earn the party's trust and offer them the reward. 2. So, yes. So he probably assumes that this whole situation is just too much and he doesn't want anything to do with it. It's too dangerous, too much bloodshed. He warns everybody in the village. Everybody knows to stay away from this rock, and they agree to move the boat over and be able to be done with this whole travesty. I think Ferd will probably be the one to assume ownership of Bortus's boat and will sell it to somebody in town, make some money of this, and perhaps have a few drinks in honor of Bortus. The party, having done this deed and explored the, the little shoreline here, I don't really feel like they deserve too much for quest completion XP for this, but I do feel like they at least, well, I mean, they earned Ferd's respect, and they earned Ferd, I didn't even think about him fording and his name being Ferd. We're not going to talk about that. We'll say that, the party will get at least 100 XP apiece for having done their part here. I do think that they have done something for the village, and we at least put to rest one of the rumors and one of the quests. And if they wanted to go in there and cleanse out all the leeches, that's totally within their right to do it. But I think for right now, it's safe to say Ferd owes them a debt, and he's happy to have them as friends and willing to help them out for at least giving him peace, because his friend was missing, and now they have a very good idea of what happened, so at least he can rest easily knowing that. So let's go ahead and add the XP, and, well, now we have our means to cross the water, so let's figure that out. Now that I've looked over some of the rules for traveling with our small sailing vessel, I looked over the rules in the advanced fantasy genre rules, and I figure that a sailboat is probably what we're dealing with right now. I don't imagine that Ferd had the resources to buy anything larger than this, nor had a need for anything larger than this, and he's able to travel through the water 72 miles in a day. So it seems like we'd be able to cross that gap on the map pretty quickly. So let's take a quick look at the map, shall we? Okay. So since our party are off here in Val-Idar, and we're going to be crossing over to this forested section, each one of these tiles on the map was 8 miles, if I'm not mistaken. And with this in mind, traveling across here would be, nothing really. It would be quite the short trip. I believe only 1/9 of the day, which, I don't want to have to do math, but just about, like 2 hours or so. So the party would have the chance to cross over pretty easily. Now, there's a chance of a random encounter when traveling through this coastal waters of a 1 in 3. So let's quickly roll that. 5. So nothing. Cool. So the party continue across the way, ending up here in this little forested section before being dropped off by Ferd and ending up here in the forest. Okay, interesting. So while we're here traveling in these wildlands, let's quickly roll up some weather and see what we're dealing with for that. So using our random weather generator, I found that it's moderate weather, a little bit windy, but nothing super dangerous or important in that regard. Okay, so now that we're off here in the forest, I think it's safe to say that we can begin looking to see, I guess which way we're going to really travel here. So maybe the party will continue up the coastline, again, attempting to figure out what it is that they're, what else makes up for the whole coastline. So let's get rolling according to our Hexplorer guide. So using our Hexplorer guide, we know that there is a chance of our forest turning into a lot of other things. But we'll roll a quick d20 and a d8, and we'll see if we get anything fancy, and we'll see what happens to the next tile. So 2, so it stays a forest, and 7 means there's nothing fancy. So the party spend a good bit of their day traveling north, and they make their way into continuation of the forest, and the coastline continues a little bit. I'll quickly jot that in. And cool. And I imagine the party are just going to keep following the coastline and see where they end up. So a 10 and a 1. Ooh, so we did find something fancy. It's still a forest, but it's fancy forest. Okay, so let's jot that in real quick on our map. And we'll see what we're dealing with. now that the coastline is officially closed off a bit. Excellent. And it's something interesting. So let's go ahead and check what this interesting thing might be. So we got a D12 to roll. And let's see what it gives us. 6. So a 6 on our guide says that there are rivers, roads, or an island. Which, honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me. So let's go ahead, let's go to our rivers and roads, and let's see what kind of river we might get. This is going to be flowing into the sea, but there's a chance that there might be something interesting on this river. Let's see what we get. 8. So 8 shows that there's a curve. I don't always follow the guide for this river section to a T. No pun intended for any fording of anything. Anyway, so let's go ahead and let's start making that river. It curves up into the bend. So now the party have at least an option here where they could follow the river. Now, they've spent pretty much their entire day adventuring, so I think it's safe to say that we'll spend at least the evening here, chilling in the forest by the river's edge, and we'll set up camp, and we'll all eat a trail ration. I'm going to roll a d6. If we get a 1, then it'll say that we got enough food during the day to at least feed the party. 5, so no. Now let's also roll a random encounter to see if we were safe and unaccosted on our trip here through the wilderness. Now, because it's a forest, we have a 2 in 6 chance of running into some sort of trouble. A 1. Oh boy. And you know what? Let's save this random encounter that we encounter in the evening for next time. I guess now it's time to say goodbye. I'm trying to leave on a bit of a cliffhanger, and it's definitely not because I know my episodes have all been like an hour long. I'm trying to cut back on that a bit. I released an episode on this channel, my DM Diaries, and I did a little bit of a deep dive into how I've been feeling lately, and with the hobby as a whole. As you guys know, I do some music, I do some podcasts, and the feelings of burnout are something that I think a lot of us deal with. So if you feel inclined to check that out, I'll try to put a little, if I can figure out the YouTube of it, I'll put a little thing here so you can watch that video if you're so inclined. But I wanted to say again, thank you so much to everybody who's been watching these videos. I know that this is a niche genre for the hobby, and it's really cool to see that a lot of people are so interested in this. I'm super grateful for all the comments I've been getting and everybody who's been liking the videos and helping keep this little channel of mine alive. And it feels good to have recorded this, and it feels good to be back at the table chucking dice. I'm happy with how things have been going with the party so far. Again, I'm pretty interested to see how Todrick the dwarf falls into this. For some odd reason, I feel like as soon as a dwarf enters the party, it feels like we're playing D&D again. So I'm excited to see what this guy's going to do, and I'm excited to see what we get for a random encounter, because it'd be pretty funny if we had to do a startup out here in the forest, found the river, and just get absolutely bushwhacked by a bunch of orcs or something. But I don't know. That's what the game's all about, right? So again, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching, and hope to see you guys soon for episode 6. So yeah, thanks for sticking around for the leech hunt. I'll see you next time. Bye.